It's Wednesday, the 18th of October, 2023. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's get going with story number 1. An interest rate rise in 3 weeks' time when the Reserve Bank Board next meets is, it seems, a live option, with the central bank having little tolerance for inflation.
The minutes of the Reserve Bank Board meeting from a couple of weeks ago, released yesterday, showed that any unexpected strength in inflation could force a rate rise. The statement said the board has a lower tolerance for a slower return of inflation to target than currently expected. Now, reading between the lines, economists said it meant a rate rise is very possible at the November meeting. The Reserve Bank expects inflation to return to its 2 to 3% target band late in 2025, but if there's any slippage, then expect a hike. The pivotal data point is the inflation numbers from the Bureau of Statistics. They're due out in a week's time.
What's the Reserve Bank most worried about here, Sean?
Wages growth, Michael. In many service areas like hairdressing, restaurants, that type of thing, core inflation remains persistently high, and that reflects higher wages. Not really that surprising given how low the unemployment rate has been. Also, oil prices are rising again. That will feed through to inflation both directly and indirectly. Among economists, few think that there'll be a rate rise next month, but plenty think there's one more in the offing over the next 12 months. Michael, we might all be feeling the 4 percentage point rate rises in the past 17 months, but local rates are actually relatively lower than the US and Canada, than the UK, the Euro region, New Zealand, and a host of other countries.
Okay, on to story number 2, Sean. The repatriation of Australians in Israel is continuing, with a Qatar Airlines flight arriving in Sydney last night.
The Qatar Airways flight is the first dedicated service flying Australians home from the conflict zone, arriving ahead of a Qantas flight that will leave London this evening and stop in Dubai, also bringing home Australians fleeing Tel Aviv. Other Australians have left the region aboard Etihad commercial flights or been rescued by Canadian Defence Force flights. Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles said yesterday morning the government had helped about 700 people leave Israel, just under 600 of whom were Australian. The Qatar flights form parts of these efforts. Now, 45 Australians remain trapped in Gaza, which is very worrying. Moving on to the international side of this story, President Joe Biden will travel to Israel tonight in a visit designed to signal US solidarity with Israel and help prevent conflict from engulfing the region. It comes after the US brokered a deal with Israel to develop a plan together to enable humanitarian aid from donor nations and multilateral organisations to reach civilians in Gaza as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister has warned that preemptive action is possible if Israel moves closer to its looming ground offensive in the Gaza Strip. And the Israeli Air Force says it struck Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. It's just nothing good about this story, Michael.
No, certainly not. All right, story number 3, Sean. This is a bit of good news. This is quite exciting. National Australia Bank and Commonwealth Bank have switched on a new identity checking service called Connect ID, which will apparently allow companies to use banks for information about customers rather than gathering it themselves.
Yeah, now look, it's a little bit pointy-headed, so just stay with me on this one. It comes from the Financial Review. The idea is that rather than companies storing information and risking a cyber attack, like what happened to Optus last year, the banks will charge other businesses to validate credentials of customers. That way, those other businesses don't have to hold the customer details. It's called a reusable digital identity and will become an incremental revenue stream for banks. Now, banks will compete with government agencies in this service. NAB, Commonwealth Bank interested, Westpac and ANZ are also likely to join it.
Story number 4, a quick one, Sean. The Women's A-League football competition started last week. The men's starts this week, so I'm sure that head office is delighted that one-time glamour club Perth Glory has a new owner.
It's been quite a saga. Perth Glory fell into receivership and its licence was revoked in July after former owner, West Australian businessman Tony Sage, was unable to find new investors. A search for a new buyer has taken a few months. It's now expected to be purchased by Melbourne property developer Robert Bree. That's according to media reports. The terms of the deal are unclear, but those media reports say that typically it costs between $50 and $60 million to fund a club over a 5-year period.
All right, story number 5, Sean. It's always a good time to check in on the richest people in the world. Bernard Arnault has lost his spot as the second richest person in the world as a sell-off in luxury stocks pushed his net worth below that of Amazon's Jeff Bezos.
Arnault is founder and CEO of LVMH, the luxury powerhouse. His wealth has fallen $7 billion in the last week. That's when the company reported softer sales growth. Arnault is now worth about 155 billion US dollars. Jeff Bezos is 156 billion US dollars. Of course, they're a long way behind Elon Musk of Tesla and X-Fame. He's worth about 240 billion US dollars, about 50% more than Bezos or Arnault. While Arnault's wealth has fallen on the back of those sluggish sales, particularly in the US and China, Bezos and Musk have benefited from a recovery in tech stocks. In fact, Musk has added nearly 100 billion US dollars this year. Bezos about 50 billion US dollars this year on the back of jumps in the share prices of Tesla and Amazon.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Wednesday, the 18th of October, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. If 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed Business News, wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, today being Wednesday, there's a new episode of How Do They Afford That out today, our sister podcast, all about making your money work a little bit harder for you. Serious topic, though, today. It is about what to do when you run out of money. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, and I'll put a link in today's show notes as well. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.